class. Thank you. So we already have some class here called part one, part one, part one. So let's say I want to start the classes. I will simply say for a class, I will say dot part one. So to start a class, I start it with a full stop and then the name of the class I want to start. So the name of the class is part one. So I say dot part one. So let's give it a background color. So the background color of yellow. This will appear very shouty. So I will save it. Can you see that this guy has yellow color? This one has yellow. This one has yellow. So this is more specific. You can see that the specificity is 0, 1, 0. It is more specific than me coming here now and I'm saying section. Let's say I say section and I say background color of probably this. So this might apply to some, but okay, it did not even apply to anyone at all. Okay, so that is basically because I don't have any other section here. Now let me cut this thing out. Let's say I have section here now and I put this. Mind you, this section that I put here does not have a class in it. So that very section is going to have that background color. You see that background color there? I don't think it's very visible. Let's choose a color that is quite visible. Let's choose this one. So I will see if you can see that color on this, because this guy doesn't is see specificity of 001, and I have one that is saying that the specificity is 010. So it's much more specific than this guy. So this applies to part one. I'm going to take it. Now, it's also only when I give a class that I can be much more specific. I can be more specific again when I give a pseudo class. Pseudo element, I mean, is when I do something like this, dot first of type. Let me say first of type. Now, this first of type has a specificity of what? 011. So I'm actually telling this thing to apply to the first section. So I will save. So when you look here, you can see that is the first section, and it is much more specific than this part one. Mind you, that first section has a class of part one. That first section has a class of part one, but this background color did not apply to it. It rather applied to this very one, because this 011 is much more specific than 010. Do you get this thing? So to prove to you that how this thing works, do you know that if I come here and I give a color, let's say I give a color of white, can you see that this thing also applies to what? This text that is inside here. It applies to this text that has this thing now, even though it has this background. Unless I come here and write something that contradicts this, that is when it will do that. So let's say I come here again and I say color green. So this one will apply. It will no longer be color white, because I have written something that contradicts what it is. So if I don't have this thing here, okay, it's going to pick this, even though that this is more specific than this, except when I write the same property that is here. That's when it's going to supersede whatever that is here. So if I don't write the same property, it's going to take this. So you need to understand specificity well before we delve into this CSS guy very, very well. It will help you to actually know what is he using and what is he not using. Now let's maximize our screen and I will inspect this element. Inspect elements. So when I go to inspect elements and I look at CSS, can you see that here I have color white, here I have color green. You can see that color white is being cancelled and color green is here. So whenever you see this, it means there is a rule that is more specific than this, that is higher than it. So that is why it cancelled this. So in case you write something and you notice that what you wrote is not coming out, is not applying, it means that, and then you come here and you see it being cancelled, it means that there is something that is more specific than it. That is why it is cancelling that rule. Okay, so you can be much more specific and everything. So anything you want to target, you can be able to target it only if you know what to do. Okay, let's say that, you know, here I have a H2 that is part 1. Now I want to target just the H2 that is part 1. I don't want to target all part 1, only want to target the H2 that has a class of part 1. Mind you, I have another H2 here and this is H2, but I want to target this very H2 that has a class of part 1. So what will I do? How would I write that in CSS? I'll simply come here and say H2. You know, if I say H2 now, and probably I give it background color of blue. Something is happening here. This thing is writing red because I cannot. Okay. Okay, so I need to close this one. So that's what it means. So you can see this thing applies here, it applies here, and it applies here. But I only want it to apply to the one that is what? That has a class of part 1. So I will come to this point and I will say dot part 1. So this is more specific than this. You can see that the specificity value here is 011. Now, look at what happened. Before I put this dot part 1, this is the guy. This guy is H2, but it is not having that blue color. Why is it not having that blue color? It's not having that blue color because it has part 1. It also has yellow color because I come here and I say background color for everything that has yellow color is part 1. But the moment I say dot part 1, this specificity now is 011, which is now higher than 010. So it means that this guy will no longer, be yellow color, it will now be blue. That is exactly what happens here. You need to understand how this specificity guy works. Because it can spoil your work if you don't know. That is the problem you will have in CSS. You will write something and it's not working, or it's working in something else. It's not working where you want it to work. And one of the reasons that this thing happens is because you don't actually understand specificity. So whenever it happens, you just look at it and ask yourself, hey, it's like there is a rule that is more specific. You check the specificity, but the best way for you to understand it is to go to your developer, to your DOM, developer council, and then check what rule is actually showing on that very element. Okay? Do you get me? So with this, we've been able to deal and understand specificity and first of all, so that when we delve into deep and more advanced things in CSS, we'll be able to know that this is what is happening or this is what is affecting our code.